Welcome to the Fourth Part Podcast, where Masons can meet to discuss Freemasonry, life, and the world around them. The opinions of the participants are their own and do not represent any Grand Lodge stance or opinion. And now here are your hosts, Worshipful Brother Matthew Andrew Sales, aka the Grumpiest Past Master, and Brother Daniel Massiana, aka the OG Daniel Son. Yeah, welcome back.
Right. Just saying that first pod was like I was meeting my girlfriend's parents for the first time.
Yeah.
You know?
Which
one was the salad fork?
It is. It's like a our test run almost went smoother than our first, but we hope people like it.
Right.
But
we didn't even curse. Fuck.
Hey, listen, that was shaking the cobwebs off, right? So we're back
shaking
at
something.
It. So we're back at it, and we welcome everybody back to our second episode. We don't have a title for this one. We'll just have to make one up at some point, right? I guess.
Live from the quarries. I don't know.
Yeah.
Something.
The unpolished ashlars.
Yeah. Ashlar hole. No. I don't know.
We're a hot mess.
We are.
But
that's what makes us us. See,
right.
We were just saying, right? It's not the attainment of perfection. It's the overcoming the imperfection that's more admired.
Right. Yeah.
I think. I don't know.
We'll kind of dip into a little bit of symbolism before we get into what we were just talking on the side about. The rough and the perfect ashlar.
Yes. One of my favorite symbolic pieces, right? Because even as, let's just get metaphorically, right? The rough ashlar has been chiseled by the sculptor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse my language, I've been drinking. And it's made perfect at some point. Well, not perfect, but more suiting for the builder's use, right?
Right.
And through life are hard times and things that I don't want to say hard times, but things that don't resonate with our journey, what we feel our journey is, right? Because we try to control every aspect of life. But we're always saying, "Oh my God, why me? Today, really? I don't need this today." But those are the strikes of the chisel from the sculptor, right?
Right.
The grand architect, if you will. And those are the things that later on in life help us out, right? You show me a knight in shining armor, I'll tell you he's never been battle tested.
Right. And before we get too deep on it, for the people that aren't Masons,
right?
An ashlar is a rough stone,
unhewed stone,
right? That came from the quarry. So think of just like, let's give somebody an example that think of a cobblestone, right? If anyone's ever seen a cobblestone, or I don't know if people could see them all the way back there.
They're
pretty
it
far
right
back.
I'll go right over there and get it.
Yeah,
Tell
I can't really zoom in. It's hard to see, but think of a cobblestone or a curbstone that's rough on the outside, and it's imperfect. It's not a perfect. It doesn't have nice edges.
It's an unhewed junk piece of rock.
Right. It's a raw rock.
Right.
It's roughly shapen into the form that someone would envision like a red brick being. Nice, clean edges. You know, you can actually level it in a building.
Right. A builder, whoever the architect would be, or stonemason, would see this jagged piece of rock, if you will, and say, hey, listen, I could use that for that. And it would be fitting. It would chisel it and make it fitting for his use, which would be either a part in the structure, right? A mason in society, if you will. Again, it's more fitting for the builder's use. So he would make this thing that's unusable essentially usable.
Right.
Right? Go ahead.
So when you look at it's the thing is in masonry, there's so many layers, at least the way I look at things. There's so many layers to each symbol. And we've got ample time in an endless amount of podcasts to talk about everything. But I like to kind of look at every little aspect of a symbol,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there is, back to episode 1, Masonic conduct. Masonic conduct. Right. Saying right, because my brain is processing, so it needs to make a sound, and it's something you have to try to break. So an ashlar is rough in texture. It maybe doesn't fit perfectly into, think of a wall made with red brick, right? Even amount of mortar in between it. Easy to lay, easy to level, easy to make a perfectly true and plumb structure. If you have a rough stone, it takes more effort to build that perfect building. So you actually need more mortar to create a building out of a rough stone.
Absolutely.
And for the Masons that know what mortar means, we won't go into that. You need more of that mortar to kind of tie those stones together.
Right. Absolutely. It takes more effort. But even as an outsider looking in, right, for the people who aren't Masons, when you see that piece of rock, that effort has been, expunged. No, let me stop with the vocab words. But the effort, the effort has been put forth to it.
Do you want me to actually? I'll buy you a thesaurus, and we could just
I'm not into dinosaurs. Sorry.
So it's important to when you look at something, right? If we're stones, right, and you're trying to perfect yourself in a way, a rock is something you can only take away from,
right,
before it becomes perfect, right? Before it becomes a perfect
usable,
square,
right?
It becomes usable,
right.
But if you keep taking away,
it loses itself.
It becomes imperfect again,
right? Unusable,
right? So you go from imperfect to perfect, back to imperfect again.
It's almost self-destructive,
right?
In nature.
You can in life think about in life, if you're a man, and I know you wanted to talk about Father's Day because it's coming up,
right?
If you're a man and you carve out, rightfully so, time for your family, time for your work, time for your church, time for your other activities that are important to you and your family, right? And you get to a point where you almost carve out too much, and now you don't have time for your friends.
Or even yourself. You start to lose yourself.
Right.
You don't have
and yourself could be,
right.
It could be something that's with with your friends, with your families, but something that's instinctually yours.
Or you. I mean, you yourself.
Right. It could be reading.
Right.
It could be, I like to read books, and you're chiseling away on your life, and you're like, okay, I don't have time to, I don't have time to go golfing. I don't have time to do this because I have to fit in my family. I have to fit in. And yes, this prioritizing is important. It always is. And time management.
But you become a machine.
Right. And we learn about that specific symbol, about time management in Masonry. But how much can you chisel away? Because this is supposed to be you. At what point do you chisel away so much that you aren't you anymore, and you then become imperfect again?
Right. Well, that's
because and it becomes nearly impossible, right? If you break off a big chunk of a rock, of a stone,
right,
and now you're past the point of, I had everything ready to go, right? Everything's measured correctly. Everything is perfectly square. Everything's perfectly plumb. Everything's perfectly level. And now I pushed it a little too far. And I've lost the time to, say, build cars or go golfing or something that makes you instinctually you. Now
Yeah.
that could be gone forever. You can't replace that piece of stone. What do you have to do?
Use
You
more mortar.
You have to either use more mortar,
Or start over with another piece.
which mortar is that's your support.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to use a little bit more. You might have a little divot in your life
Right.
that your spouse or your family
You might
or
not
your
even
friends
be
that your
useful at that
friends
point.
that your friends could fill that little chunk that you maybe
Right.
chiseled out. But you can't replace that stone.
No.
You have to either try to fill it with support from your friends, from your family, from whomever, to fill that little void that you carved out by accident, or you have to then completely remove the stone down to the lowest point to make it perfect and usable again.
Right. And it's very essential that you maintain what you are and know what you want to represent. Because if you overextend yourself to the point where you're not usable, then what's the point, right? We lose ourselves sometimes in acts of service, sometimes in acts of self-destruction. You know, society makes it easy to do that too.
Yeah.
And, you know, it could be just, you know, wanting to just be there for your family, right? And you're always there, you're doing this, you're doing that, but then you get bitter, right? You start doing so much stuff, you're not resting well, or you're not making time for the things who you are, right?
Right.
Some of the hobbies that fill you, some of the even work, right? Certain people take jobs because of the money, but not for what they love.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't spread those lessons now to your family, to your kids, and others around you because you're so bitter about what you have to do. And life passes fast that way. You're not usable to society. You're just another moving piece.
Exactly. It's exactly right. And I feel like people lose perspective. Right? We're taught like let's try to manage everything. Manage our time, manage, you know, and,
Right.
and try to look at what's important. There's so many symbols in Masonry that's about organizing your life and prioritizing what's important and being precise in what you do.
Right. Well, and Masonry also, in my humble opinion, doesn't emphasize so much on controlling, but also responding. Where a lot of times in life they want you to prevent, right? But you can plan, but it doesn't always work out that way. So that's why Masonry focuses not so much on the material but the tools.
Right.
You know?
And I feel like a lot of people, like, they always ask us, how, like, you wear these crazy rings.
Yeah.
And why do you wear that? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really shy away from explaining it. In our specific ritual book, there is explanations written in plain English for a reason. And
is it for the unknowing though? Like
if it's written in plain English.
No, I'm saying as far as, for example, like when I wear a ring, I could be on the subway, and I'll see a tourist. Actually, this happened prior to COVID, and a French couple saw my ring, and they came over and they said, "Hey, I see you're a Freemason." I said, "Yes, yeah." So they're apparently their nephew or their son, I don't remember, it was so long ago, but was a Freemason. He said, if you ever are in America and you see that symbol and you need help, go to that person. So they needed directions. It was something they wanted to go to, like the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And right in the subway, they saw the ring. They came up to me and felt like I was able to give them help. And I did. And for me, those symbols, those rings, they're so subtle. They're really for the eyes that are trained to see them, right? It's
Right.
not to show off, hey, I'm a Freemason, or hey, I'm a Mason, or I practice Masonic lifestyle. But it's for the people who are looking for them, that are trained, right? You see another brother, he knows what to look for, right?
Right.
I don't always agree with wearing a big jacket, right, with a square and compass.
Yeah.
It should be subtle. Because
It should be subtle. Well, in my opinion, those symbols are really more for us.
Right, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
They're meant to mean certain things to remind us.
Right.
And I guess we can go down this road. So people ask me, like, what are all these crazy, like, what is that? What does that mean? Whatever. And I could, I could explain, like, what the compasses mean, what the square means. And there's Masonic books out there that they're endless that people can read. They're written.
Right.
They're,
Or what it means to
by,
you, not essentially what it means.
Right.
per
There's
se.
no specific. There is some general. This is
Right.
what this should mean. About each symbol. There's very few, and I feel like in Masonry, which is beautiful to me, that they leave a lot there.
You have room for interpretation.
Right. They leave a lot there. And a brother that created Scottish Rite, right? He did that off of expanding off the 3 degrees.
Right.
Albert Pike did that off of his understanding.
Yeah, his interpretation.
His interpretation of how
Right.
how does this fit? There's got to be more here. How does this fit into the real world? That's always intrigued me. That type of thought process for somebody that is in Masonry, is asking that question without
right.
making that question too crazy. That's always been interesting to me. Is
Well,
how
right. It's a thought
think the
process.
man
It's not an
created-
answering process.
Right.
It's a thought process.
The man created an entire concordant body of Freemasonry.
Based on what ifs, or
Right,
what
what
could
ifs.
be. Right.
And the not knowing and the wanting to know, there's more here. There's such deep symbols.
Well, that's living essentially off of faith, right? If you will, not faith in religion sense, but faith of the what if, what could be, or what is this? Or there's something more. That's what drives a lot of people, and a lot of times that journey is the most rewarding.
Right. And we said this in our equipment test. It's
Right.
like, it's all about not making the question too complex. About the rough ashlar and the mortar. Right. It's about looking at kind of subjectively, what is this supposed to use for, and how can it be used in life. So for the people that aren't Masons, free and accepted Masons, we'll jump there real quick. For people that aren't Masons, the term free and accepted Masons. Freemasons, ancient stone guilds in the Middle Ages, they were operative Masons
Right.
that actually built the cathedrals and built great buildings and everything
Right,
back
they
then. They
understood
were
the
physical.
science,
What we would
right.
think of labor unions nowadays, actually physically creating buildings.
Right.
During the Renaissance, those people started to accept people of intellectual means into their guilds, unions, okay? And that happened through the Renaissance and forward. And that's where you get free Masons. Those Masons were they were actual builders, actual stonemasons that moved through different parts of the world and were able to build buildings and freely move between countries.
Well, not just, and just to kind of jump on, piggyback off of what you're saying, the buildings that these guilds would make, I mean, the buildings that these builders would build were one with the landscape.
Mm-hmm.
They were knowledgeable on star alignments, certain vibrations in certain environments. These buildings were lasting edifices, right? That to this day, some of them are still existing, right? And it's the same thing with the people that they allow to dwell with them. These are people who add to the landscape. They add to society in a positive way, where it's a free thinking, right? It's going back to the what ifs, what could be's. These are not people who are living in absolute. These are people who are under the constant learning procedure, right? So even if you don't practice it, and that's where we get into speculative versus operative. If you want to,
and those speculative Masons, they're the philosophy type
Right.
people, and they bring in that extra
the thought,
the
right?
extra thought that, but by no means diminishing what our ancient operative Masons
No.
learned. And the reason why we use symbols in Masonry is because people didn't read back then.
Right.
Being able to read back then was you had to be a person of influence, a person of class, a person of money to be able to read or even own a book. You're talking about people hand scribing books. That's how
Yeah.
long ago we're talking about. So how do you teach a lesson back then? A picture's
Right.
worth 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
Picture's worth 1,000 words. So if they're able to say, let's take this symbol, and then all I have to do is say this image means this.
Oh, not me. Is it that absolute though?
It's not. It doesn't need to be absolute in
Right.
a way. It says it could be this symbol is It represents this
Right.
morality, this meaning, this type of plane of thought. I'll say plane of thought, right? Because a plane is it's linear,
Right.
right? When we talk about being on a level, so a train of thought meaning me and you are on the level, meaning me and you think similarly,
Right.
right? So a symbol is this is what you were talking about, and you can move left and right of it,
Right.
but you don't ever move up or down. If you're talking about the beehive,
Mm-hmm.
it means industry, right? Bees very industrious, always moving, always working. But it means so much more than that because you can move left or right of it, but never changing meaning industry,
Right.
right?
Yeah, it's representative of
Something.
in this realm, right? So, like you said, this is
Right, but remaining on that
right. This is the
remaining on that
subject.
plane,
Right.
and not like kind of deviating from that plane.
And that's essentially what I mean especially when you get into the Albert Pike part, where hey, listen, from this he got all of this, because it wasn't absolute in a sense, but it
right. He
was
stayed in that lane for that symbol,
exactly
and just expounded upon it.
right.
That's
Absolutely.
that's what's always intrigued me about Masonry.
Right.
You can, this is what this
And enhance
this
it.
is right, and enhance it because hey, this is what it means, but it goes way further in either direction.
Yeah, and in so many books of the times, whether you're getting into religious books or certain other things, right? When this first came about, it was like, all right, all of this other stuff is absolute. There's no interpretation. This is what it is. This is what it says. And if you don't believe that, you're a problem. And Masonry was...
Yeah, it's the first form of like free thinking.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was free
like, okay,
thinking, and this is okay to do this.
right, we'll give you guidelines, and you work
And
with
question.
it. You just work within these
Right.
guidelines, and you're okay.
Yeah. That's why question marks, I don't think were even invented back then. Were you allowed to use them? Like, what is that?
You know, Danny, add it to my list of things I need to actually look up.
Right, I
When
think
the-
so. When was it invented? When is
And
it okay?
I'm terrible with this because I'm not like a perfect
Mm-hmm.
etymology.
I don't know what that means. Never
I
heard
could
that
be
before.
so wrong. It could be the most wrong I've ever been in my entire life.
Hey, but let's
It's
add
the-
it in there.
it's the
Webster.
It's the origin of words.
All right, say it again, slow.
Etymology. I could be just pronouncing it wrong. There's a word. There's people. There's professors that all they do is just study the origin of words.
I saw a
like
movie
where they come from, the
on
ancient
that.
Greek words, and that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It could be anything along those lines.
Right.
That did it.
Yeah, I mean, it's big, and it's something we take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
The pursuit of knowledge and to question the answers.
We could take a quick break,
Go ahead.
and we'll be back. We appreciate everybody being here. It's been a dream of Danny and I's. Oh, is the light too bright for you? Goodness gracious! Look at this guy. You're not wearing your Men in Black watch though to be wearing that.
No, I sold that. I had to.
Oh man, I love it. It's great. It's the bright lights of stardom. You can't handle it.
I'm still in the darkness in respects to Freemasonry.
Maybe I'll just lay over blinded by the light if we don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, why not? Right. Right. I found these back there, so I put them on for a second. I'm going to take them off, though.
So we were talking about the symbols and how you can actually find those symbols, and how Albert Pike was able to expand on the symbols moving along that flat plane.
Right.
And that's what's great about Masonry, is that, and you can interpret that as long as you don't deviate too far off that plane. You can interpret those symbols,
Right, because, I mean, for
and try to fit them into
but it also has to
actual
be
life.
accepted by, I don't want to say accepted, but it's got to make sense, right?
Yeah.
On a whole, right? Albert Pike, when he interpreted his understanding of these symbols and what they meant to him, it resonated with so many people, and it was accepted and eventually put into practice where it is now the Scottish Rite. And that's the whole thing. Masonry touches that broad spectrum as long as you don't get too crazy, like, involved with bending it to fit, right? It goes back to, if you take too much of that rough ashlar down, it's not usable. And the same thing with these theories and these hypotheses and these understandings of what this symbol could mean versus what it means versus what it should mean versus, there's so many things where people try to bend it. Like there's this guy with the numerology stuff we see, and
Guy had me cracking up.
Right, I mean,
it was too much.
that's skill, though.
But
that's
it's
skill.
impressive.
That is.
Because you know why? Even though he got really, really deep, he got super deep into where the number 33 fits into, and maybe I could find a link to it so people could see it, on TikTok or
He's a good guy.
YouTube. Yeah, no, it's interesting because maybe you can find those crazy connections, and coincidences are only coincidences when you want to think it's a coincidence.
Hey, you make it fit versus, all right, hey, it's like taking a square peg and putting it into a round hole, right? If you use a hammer, it'll fit. But that's not really where it's supposed to go.
Right, but sometimes having that, I don't want to say doubting, right? How many times can a coincidence happen, and if you have a faith in something other than us controlling things, which is what Masons believe, you have to believe that there's a higher power.
Right.
And be it what you may, whether it's Jesus, whether it's Allah,
Any historical figure, energy, whatever. Yeah,
energy. It's
There's
something.
got to be a belief.
Right, something larger than you.
Right.
Controlling the universe. how many times can a coincidence happen? And it's different for every person. It's different for me than it is from you, from any other person. How many times can a coincidence happen? And do you say there could be something else going on here that is steering the ship?
Well, that
or at
that
least
should
whispering
be,
in the ear of the person steering the ship.
right.
So
That should be part of anything, right? Anything that happens, you should at least have one of the thoughts be like, there's something intelligent driving the ship, right? Or not so much intelligent, right? I shouldn't say that. There's got to be a question where there's something beyond art, because to say, hey, listen, just because I don't understand it, it doesn't exist, is the most ignorant.
It's very naive.
Oh man, there's no way you should ever be that closed off that you could say, just because I haven't seen it, it doesn't exist, or just because I can't think it, it doesn't exist. A lot of people don't understand the bare essentials on how your, oxygen is turned into fuel for us, right? Or any type of food.
Right, exactly.
So just because you don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
So I watched I want to say it was a TikTok, and I didn't know this, and I'm not saying I don't know everything by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know everything.
No,
but I am a generally, and my old work friend that I work with for a lot of years is a brother here.
Great guy.
Yeah. Worked together for almost 10 years. He used to joke. He said, man, you are the king of useless information. And I took it as a compliment. He wasn't saying it as meaning useless, meaning I don't want to hear it. He meant it like useless as in it can't, it's not something that somebody needs to know.
Well, I think knowing him, I think it was more like, wow, how does this interest you, right?
Yeah, and that could be it. And I said to him, I said, well, I wish it was interesting enough for me to win money on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
But
well, who wants to be a millionaire?
there was I'm like a facts person. I love like, hey, did you know? Like he's always said, oh, you'd be like, hey, did you know? Like we'd just be like driving around somewhere at work, and he'd be like, oh my god, did you know like this happened here, or this is where this happened on this spot, or did you know about this person? This person lived here or whatever.
Right.
And I actually didn't know this, and I found this out thankfully from, it was social media. I believe it was TikTok or something. That every U.S. president has either been assassinated, or there was an assassination attempt on their lives.
Everyone
that was elected on a year that ended in a 0.
Oh wow!
Or every 20 years, either or. So either there was exactly 20 years in between an assassination attempt, or they were elected in a year that ended in a 0.
That's crazy.
Every single president that fit those criteria was either assassinated or there was an attempted assassination. Ronald Reagan was the last one, actually didn't die when John Hinckley Jr. shot him. Because he was elected in 1980, and there was an assassination attempt and he didn't die. I did not know that.
That's crazy.
Like, so those...
No, the numbers, they line up. It's easy to line up.
Right, so, yeah. 1960, 1980, 20 years, ending in zeros.
So after that was, who else?
That was the last one. There hasn't been a president
since then.
Since then that has been 20 years or been elected in a year that ended in a 0. But every president all the way back to George Washington was.
Interesting. It's a fun fact, Snapple fact.
Right. So it's just weird. It's a weird fact.
Yeah,
It's a weird
no,
fact. And you could even believe in it or not believe in it all you want.
right.
But yeah, I don't know where I stand on it. But it was like such a strange combination of
how do you come
it's
off?
not like it's like every day 17 and a half years or
Right.
18 years, 20 years,
Every
or
blue moon.
or right or elected with a year that ended in a 0.
So, how was that one of those things where you were just kind of down the rabbit hole and then, oh wow, this intrigues me, or
I don't try not to go too far because then you really
Right.
start getting like you're not even
Right.
you're not even wearing a tinfoil hat at that point. You're wearing a tinfoil suit.
I could
But I just
imagine what
wanna
you're like
just-
suggested. Like, what does Google suggest
What
you?
is YouTube saying to me? Like, yeah, you would like that.
Right.
That birdsaren'treal.com.
Turtles aren't ticklish. Like,
Yeah. My God.
yeah, like
There is a website, Birds Aren't Real.
I saw that.
Have you ever seen a baby pigeon?
No, or a squirrel, a baby squirrel. But somebody did say we were talking about flat Earth, right? I don't know. If we can even say that.
Danny, there is no
Right.
safe spaces here.
No, it's crazy. They
The
were
only
talking
safe
about
space
it.
we have is something that our
Right.
Grand Master is going to yell at us for.
Yeah, so I was like, so the stars aren't stars. They're just the holes at the top of the box for air. What do you think? What do you
God.
think? They're not stars. They're holes.
Yeah, Danny, the beautiful thing about life
Mm-hmm.
is that we don't know, right?
Well, can I jump on that real quick?
Please.
Pause. I was watching this thing on how they made globes, right? It had to be like the 30s. And one of the things I do when I'm on social media is read the comments. So these people, they make this round piece, right? They dowel it, and they cover it in old newspaper, and then they paint it, right? And like the second and third comment was like, it'd be a lot easier if it was flat. Right? So I guess they started making maps then, I guess. But the other thing was, right, as important as the questions are, not every question is important. And we had spoke about this, I don't know if it was earlier today, but that's where the so what comes into play, right? Whether it's flat or not, like I'm not gonna get.
We're not the first people to ask.
So what?
We're not the first people in
But how
history
does that
ever-
change, right?
You could think of any question you could possibly imagine,
Right.
and somebody has asked that question,
Right. And contradicted it or proved it wrong, proved it right.
Yeah.
But at some point, like I've seen people get into blowout or arguments about this, right? How does it change your life? So what? Is that doing anything constructive in your life? Right? So what? So now if it's like, hey, the cure to cancer, that's something worth putting attention towards. But I see so many people waste attention, effort, and even lose friendships over meaningless things that you can really just be like, so what?
Yeah.
Right? Where your attention is, what's grabbing your attention, being conscious of your attention.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a form of attention deficit disorder, right? ADD.
It could be. It could be. So we wanted to talk about Father's Day.
Yeah.
There's a lot of brothers out there that are fathers, and and being a father,
Mm-hmm.
not to step out of what a man in a Catholic home or a Christian home.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be a father to just a child. Right? You could be a father to humanity. Right? You could be a father to humanity, you could be a father to society and contribute.
What do you mean by that? As far as like what let me ask you, what is there a difference between being a father and a dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So
They
what
could
is
be- you
what
could
is being a
be-
father?
So being a dad
Mm-hmm.
is, to me, is be an example to your children.
Mm-hmm. A safe place.
And being a father,
Mm-hmm.
and the term father to me can mean, it's almost like elder.
Right.
And me and you by no
Mhm.
means elders, but you could be kind of older
Mm-hmm.
in the way our thinking is.
Well, a father, in my opinion, if I may,
Yeah.
is an individual of a man, if you will, right, who has created. Right? So like you said, a father could be a father in society, right? You create whatever you create. Like father time, you create time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, a dad is different. A dad is an example. A dad is a safe place. A dad is a provider. All those things into
Right. And
into
you could
one.
be both at the same time.
Absolutely.
And you
And
should
one
be
doesn't take
both.
away from the other. However, you have fathers that are lacking,
Mhm.
and then you have dads that are lacking in certain ways that a father could, provide. But yeah, it's definitely a blessing if you can find or be both.
Yeah, exactly. There's a line that can be drawn in, are you giving something, are you giving guidance, are you providing, or are you giving guidance? And you could give both.
Yeah.
And you can be a father to humanity
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Well,
And
yeah.
those, and to your friends, and to your family,
Well,
to your brothers.
right.
And a father meaning elder, right?
Right.
And you can try to provide and add to their lives in some sort of way.
Yeah, a father creates, a dad nurtures,
Correct.
right?
Yeah, I agree.
So,
yeah.
so, yeah, absolutely. And not only just nurtures, but nurtures in a way where you are 1,000% the best version of yourself, right? And some things are beneficial for themselves if they're kind of growing by themselves, right? And other things need that nurturing. And like you said, a creator, and knowing when to create too, responsibly for the benefit of a whole.
Yeah. So, as a dad,
Mm-hmm.
as a father, what do you feel like that you need to give to the world? Do you feel obligated to bring something to it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's your whole purpose. I mean, we as humans, as a human race, are cursed sometimes with the ability of free thought and self-realization, right? A squirrel gets up and knows it's got to go out and chase nuts and bury them, and a tree is, every animal on this planet has its part.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of times people spend their whole lifetime trying to figure out what that is, right? So if you yourself can't figure that out, as a dad or a father, are you going to be able to provide that for your offspring? So there's got to be a sureness, and that's where Masonry helps out a lot, because again, you took an obligation, you made a commitment. That's your purpose. You created your purpose at that point, to partake in a system, add to it, and go forth towards it, right? So then as a father, you created children. As a dad, you nurture those children. And you raise adults that don't have to recover from their childhood. In my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. I feel like, and we've said this before, that the world, the universe tells a woman when they're a woman. We've said that term.
Well, yeah. I mean, nature.
Yeah.
You again,
tells them exactly when they're a woman. And I feel like society has kind of lacked that moment where we've been able to tell man when this is time. And I feel like that sometimes we have lost the fact that everyone says it's like 18, 21. I'm like 18, I could, I could vote. 21, I can drink, or 18, I can join the military. But a lot of men, they only become a man when they bring that first child into the world, and they realize, all right, now I have to impart what I've learned onto somebody else. And I feel like Masonry should be able to spark that preemptively.
Well, yeah.
Where it says, okay,
right.
I need to realize that the world is absolute in this way. And there is something more than me going on. And it's usually religion. Religion can teach a person that early. But in the world we live in, sometimes religion kind of takes the back seat.
Right. And like you said,
Masonry can say, there's only a place where I can join, that you could end up in a position where you have somebody who's 80 plus years old. If you don't even have to be an officer, you could have a situation where you're giving a lecture in a lodge and there's 80, 90-year-olds sitting there and they're listening to the knowledge that you're able to impart upon them to help improve their lives.
Well, yeah, it's like when you go to a restaurant, you go in there with the expectation that you're going to eat. When you come to lodge, you go in there with the expectation that you're going to either build a brotherly bond or you're going to learn something. And like you said earlier, there's certain things that happen to a female's body that is nature saying, okay, you're ready to have children. You're a woman now. That doesn't happen anatomically with a man. And his surroundings play a big part in that. And that's where Masonry has assisted society for so long in doing that, right? So you see a man who comes into lodge. I don't care if you're there for a year or you're there for 50, 60 years. You're going to be different. And it's the things that interest you. I have friends that join lodge. They were asking me about it for 2 or 3 years. They joined, they got their degrees, and they left. They haven't been back to lodge since, but the way they conduct themselves in society is way different.
Yeah.
They have that aura in them where I'm here to serve my fellow man. If I see an atrocity occurring in front of me, I'm going to address it. If I see someone who I admire slipping up, I'm going to address it because it is my due diligence, right? My fiduciary responsibility to address this and say, hey, listen, I expect better of you. And not only that, but I know what you want to represent because we've had deep discussion and you've expressed that this is what you want to be represented as. This is who you want other people to see you as. And you're slipping up. So Masonry's played such a big part in holding males accountable for being a man, right? And what is a man essentially to you?
Right.
And we're not getting, a male is a male, right? But a man, when we say man, what is that? Someone who assumes responsibility. Go ahead, I'll let you take it off from there.
It's someone who takes responsibility for their actions,
Right.
and at the same time expects people to take responsibility for their actions as well.
Yeah, you hold people accountable.
Yeah, people nowadays, they expect more out of people than they expect out of themselves,
Right.
and that's unfortunate. But in the lodge, the fact that we're able to keep each other on that same moral plane, in theory, you should be able to, no matter what, say, you know what, even if this brother doesn't meet my internal expectations of what I thought should happen, I know that their mind is there.
Well, that's
I know that they're thinking along that same lines. Maybe they didn't attain what I thought they should have been, or maybe they didn't even attain what they even expected out of themselves. That they said that I can trust that they are thinking along those same lines, right? That's what that level is for. When you're on the level with somebody, and that's what Masonry is about, is that we're trying to subscribe to a system that even on its most basic level, there's that hard deck, right? This is where there may be some brothers that are, that rise above it. Sometimes they spend a ton of time doing charity work. They spend a ton of time doing, stuff for their community, stuff for their family. They extend themselves way past where most brothers can go. But they have that hard baseline that they understand that every brother is at least going to try to attain this minimum standard. And when I say minimum standard in the most loving way possible. Right. In Masonry, that minimum is, I feel, above what normal society will accept.
Right. Well, how many times as a young man, right, has the thing that stopped you from doing something been, oh, my father wouldn't approve of this, or my uncle
Quite a
wouldn't
bit.
approve? Right. So
Yeah.
Right. We're constantly measuring our success as a man to what our father has done. Right.
Yep. Father,
For
mother,
the ones,
family.
right. For the ones who are lucky enough to have that male influence.
Yeah. Outside of Masonry, what our family would deem to be acceptable.
When you come into lodge, that gets enhanced, right? Because now you're representing a brotherhood with those same type of morals.
And I'll bring up this example, right? How do you have a Masonic symbol on your car?
No.
Why?
But I did.
Why?
Sometimes I want to drive a little fast. And I don't want to disrespect the brotherhood.
Right. That
I
noticed that in myself, and I didn't notice it right away. I don't drive like in that case. I don't drive aggressively.
Right.
But there's almost like that level of, I don't want to say guilt. I don't want to say guilt. The word's not guilt. If I don't drive as perfect as possible,
right,
I feel like I'm disrespecting and I'm setting a bad example. Just like you said, like it's what would your family, would they look down upon that?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing you want to do is disappoint someone that you admire.
Right.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough because you want to be an emulation, right? I always say, like, Benjamin Franklin and a lot of the other historical figures who were Freemasons. Masonry is very proud to have these individuals.
Right. I want to be able to say, this is the group of people that I'm lumping myself up in with.
Right.
right? That's you're talking about the biggest names
Right.
that
and,
have lived.
essentially, that's what I'm saying.
In
right.
the world. The
Right.
biggest innovative minds in recent modern era.
Yeah.
I'm saying like
exactly.
modern era starting from
The Industrial Revolution.
right.
On.
Even the Renaissance, the Renaissance on.
Yeah,
talking some of the
these
biggest
rare individuals who
change the way that humanity exists.
Right. And
that's what you're talking. You're
that's
talking
what
about
I'm
people
saying.
that have shaped the world.
Right.
To say that we are a part of the same organization that these people subscribe to, that's
not only that, but going back, right? A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud to be a Freemason. I'm proud to be a Masonic practitioner." I don't know if that's even a word, but I want Masonry to be proud to have me and rave about me, right? I want to be able to hopefully live a life one day. We're 34, very young. A lot of the greats started 10 years from now, like 44. When did Elon Musk get his break? A lot of guys.
I mean, he was pretty young, but
I'm saying, like, this wasn't something that, like Alexander the Great, these things weren't bestowed upon them. This is hard work. This is individuals that weren't essentially given everything. They had to work for it,
Right. Well, so isn't that how a temple's built?
Right.
Right? Someone's got to lay that cornerstone at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be you. And they set that foundation, and they set that foundation plumb and level, and you build off of the generations before you. Because in Masonry, it's so much more than just building yourself up. It's building off of the generations prior to you as well. So you're using
if they've
them as
done
that
the right thing, right?
Right. So we should be using our past brothers, the brothers that have laid the foundation in the past, to learn from. We should be learning from them, from their words and actions, even if it doesn't happen in lodge. There's so many people that look back at older Masons and go, okay, well, there's only some quotes on, what George Washington said about Masonry, what Benjamin Franklin said about Masonry, and some have said more than others.
Yeah, but his resume
and Teddy Roosevelt and
Right.
so on, like through the decades. There's only so much that those people have said specifically on Masonry, but if they were true Masons, they could be like that Mason that maybe only comes to lodge a couple times a year, or once a year, but they're living their life like a Mason.
Right. Like I was saying about my friend who's, again, I haven't seen him I see him in life crossing, right? I haven't seen him in lodge, but he practices his Masonic. He's an upright, standing man. He does what he has to do for his family, for his job, for society. He's and that's where I feel like this is a lot different than a lot of the other civic organizations, right? Those, and not to downplay anything anybody else does, but you perform a charitable act. That charitable act starts and stops there.
Right.
Masonry builds its members to constantly do that, right? With a drop of dye in water. No matter where you go, if there's a Mason there involved, 9 times out of 10, he's the breath of fresh air, right? He's the nourishing factor in the environment. Things are better because they understand that if they practice the Masonic lifestyle, their teachings, right? And that's what it comes down to. You're a builder in its purest form. You're a builder of thyself. You're a builder of your environment, and you're a builder of other people as well. Because, right, what's the difference between a boss and a leader? Somebody once asked me. Like, I don't know. He's like, a boss gives the orders, a leader makes it happen.
Right.
And a lot of times the Masons are the leaders in the community. They make things happen. And it's not, again, on some conspiritual thing. It's, hey, listen, I see this guy's strengths, I see that guy's strengths. Sometimes I got to be the one to step back and let other people lead. It's just playing your part and just that thought process of how could I make this better? What do I need to be? Do I need to be the driver today? Do I need to be the wheel? Do I need to be the gas pedal? How do I get this system moving?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I think we should, there's so much, I don't want to say negative press, but there's so many people, and we won't go too deep into it, but people ask, like, is this a religion? Like, what is this? It's like it's and I hate to go there.
Yeah.
I really do. But
No, you have to.
yeah.
Because you rarely get to, I mean, Masonry doesn't need to defend itself. And that's one of the positive but also the negatives of the whole thing. But I'll let you continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that it's not a religion.
No.
It's spiritual in its own right.
Well, it's very similar because most religions are moral law.
Right.
Right? And
there's no doctrine in Masonry.
Masonry has
there's no dogma in Masonry.
Right. But it is moral in essence.
Right.
And
it's
that's the kind of
supposed to try to teach a person, just like the Bible, just like the Torah, just like the Quran. It tries to teach you moral lessons. I kind of equate it to this. When you're in school and you want to learn the times tables,
right,
there may be some people that need to learn it. You need to break out the numbers, like what is 3 times 3? It's 3 plus 3 plus 3. Right? That's one way of learning it. So you can add, it's addition. 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 9. But there's some people that may learn that same lesson by straight memorization. They just know that 3 plus 3 is 9.
right.
They just memorize the times tables. Some people may need a different method. 3 apples and 3 apples and 3 apples, or there's different methods to it.
Right.
And I've learned this like watching my kids trying to do Common Core. There's obviously way more ways of learning the times tables than what I remember.
Absolutely.
What I remember was, when you went to school, they go, here are the times tables. You just memorize it, and that's it. There's no other way. And I feel like sometimes religion could be that way too. Like, this is the way, there's no other way.
Well, if I could capitalize on that, because again, that's very interesting, and I agree with you. However, I think religion, and we're not allowed, so we could kind of talk about it. But religion,
we're not
right.
subscribing to
this
anyone's
is a
specific
conversation of free thought. Religion gets into a lot of the relationship of man and God, if you will.
Right.
Freemasonry gets into the relationship between subconscious and man and what you want to represent. Right. So yes, there has to be a relationship with whatever God you believe in. However, the relationship that Freemasonry emphasizes is the one of self and what you want to represent. You are the builder, you are the temple. It is, again, you have to believe in a higher power to be a Mason. However, the religious aspect, again, it's so far apart. However, it's close because, again, that moral law is kind of the thread that weaves in and out. But it's completely separate, in essence, if you think about it, right? Your relationship with God was there prior to Masonry. And when you finally become a Mason, it's really focusing on the temple you're building.
Right.
I don't know if you want to capitalize, counter. I mean, that's what free thought is about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of aspects of Masonry that I feel that people try to pigeonhole into religion.
Right.
Where we're not talking about, it's religious in the fact that the morals, the list of morals.
Right. Respect thy neighbor.
Right.
Core essences.
But those transcend multiple religions.
Right, exactly. And that's universal law.
Right. And those ways of teaching them in any religion can be awfully strict in the fact that they don't allow people to travel that road in the way they choose to get to those ends.
Well,
They're-
again, I mean, a certain
it's difficult, right?
it is because
'cause
what it's
I'm of-
dependence, empowerment. You know, it's a thin line, and it's very.
It is.
It's
It
one
is.
that most people
And
don't
all
even
the religions
navigate.
of the world. Let's be honest. All the religions of the world are they're right there with each
Right.
other. You know, there are clear differences, obviously,
Right.
in all the religions. There are definitive differences in what they believe of who's the Messiah and
Well, when
whatever
you get
have you.
when
Like,
you get into a relationship with God,
yes,
they vary in essence, right?
yeah,
However, when you get into relationship with
morality.
man and morally how you're supposed to conduct yourself in
they're
society
almost the same.
is very close.
They're
The God
almost the
part,
same.
listen, you have brothers and sisters?
I don't.
Okay, I have a brother, and my relationship with my mom is different than his relationship. Same creator, different relationship, right?
Mhm.
We came from the same place. However, that's how religion is, in my humble opinion. Many different scopes of life, many different locations on the planet, in the universe, if you will, whatever you believe in. The guy next to you in the same church, in the same temple, in the same mosque, wherever, he's got a different relationship.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I feel like that's where a lot of like conspiracy theorists like get off the rails too with Masonry.
Yeah.
And we said that there's that level you can move along with symbolism, right?
Right.
And you can get like way down the road, but that's where some people with conspiracies with Masonry they go off the deep end. They're not still on that same level plane.
Right.
They start to then deviate up or
Right.
down off of that with any particular symbol. They go, well, this could mean this, and this can mean this, and this can mean this. But a Mason looks at it when it stays in context with that symbol.
Yeah.
People that want to kind of think the worst of Masonry, they're not traveling along that level. They start to like go off of it and say, where can I make this connection?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
if we look at something on a level of morality,
Mm-hmm.
if we assume that this symbol was created because we wanted it to be moral in some sort of way, and follow that line of questioning, assuming that the moral value is constant,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to end up someplace nice.
Right.
But if you're assuming the worst, just like if you assume the worst in a person,
Mm-hmm.
if you start to assume the worst at every moment in everything that you do in life,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you start to think the worst in somebody.
Yeah.
And that's where you get down that rabbit hole and you really start to distrust a person because
Well,
you start to do the what ifs, but the bad what ifs.
Well, they
Masonry-
personalize it too. You know, they make their personal struggle, and they fit it into certain things, right?
Yeah.
If I take a symbol of scissors, right, cutting a ribbon, right, I cut a ribbon, and I make that a symbol of finishing the race. I went through the finish line, right? But then someone's like, "Oh, my aunt was killed by a set of scissors." It's got to be demonic. You know what I mean?
Right.
And just to play off the part, we are, this is that whole thing about the religion wasn't a Freemasons. It's not Freemasonry in essence, but as Masons, the thought process of how that happens, that's what essentially it's about. None of that was about Masonry. It was about us as Masons having a thought process that broke down a problem and came up with an answer, my answer, his answer, and we compared answers and came to a common understanding. And that is what society is missing, in my opinion. That either different or similar, answers, and say, hey, this is what it means to me. This is what it means to me. What do you think? What do you think? Oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. And we have a better understanding of who we are, the things that make us tick, the things that make us click. You know what I mean? So
I think this is a good place to stop this
Right.
episode.
Right.
I think we just left it off at a perfect spot.
Right.
Is listening and not hearing.
Right. Listen to understand, not to respond.
Yeah. The listening and not hearing.
Right.
That's a great place to start next
Right.
time. So thank you for staying with us, and we'll see you on the next part of the 4th Part podcast.
Enjoy.